Hey guys, when I introduced the SQL series, I mentioned what SQL is and what it's used for, and we defined SQL as structured query language, which is a programming language that is used for interacting with databases. And a database is just a collection of tables. And these tables are structured data sets that either consist of columns and rows. And most of the times you'll hear analysts refer to columns as fields and rows as records. So when those two terms are thrown around, just know fields refer to columns and records refer to rows. So let's get into the SQL dialects that are commonly used out here. So whether you're practicing or whether you're working, you'll either use MySQL or you'll either use Postgres. Well, it doesn't really matter which dialect you use, because once you learn one, the other one is pretty easy to understand. I think there are only a few functions that are different in each of these dialects, but once you master one, the other one is pretty easy to grasp. And there's others, of course, which are all. There's also another one called Oracle. So it really depends on which one you get started with. It doesn't really matter, so it's just up to you. So for this particular video, we'll just be covering the basics, and these basics are just fundamental clauses you will interact with on a daily basis. So we'll look at select, we'll look at from, we'll look at what a wildcard is, and we'll look at limits. So understanding these basics sets you up for understanding even more complex topics. And later on during the series, I'll cover things like comparison operators and logical operators. But let's just keep it simple for this particular video. So why is it important for you as a data analyst or whatever data role you're in to learn SQL? You're going to use SQL to build visualizations. You're going to use it to retrieve and sort and interpret data. So it's quite fundamental for you to understand SQL because you're going to use it to break down complex information, to answer questions that are usually asked, or rather you're going to be using to solve problems in a business capacity, of course. So for this particular tutorials, I'll be using MySQL, and I chose this because it was easy for me to install and a little bit quicker for me to install. So this is what it looks like. Let me just cancel it out for you to see what it looks like. So once you install it, this is what you're going to see. I'm going to put a video on how to install MySQL, or you can go on YouTube and look on how to either install MySQL or Postgres, whichever you prefer to use. So when I click on local instance, it's going to open this whole workspace. So on the left we have schemas, and then in the center we have where you'll be writing all your queries. Okay, so for this particular tutorial, I'll be using this dataset called product dataset, and you can find them on Kaggle. And Kaggle is mostly used by data analysts to practice. Most of the times you hear when you're going for competitions, if you're going for data analytics competitions, you'll mostly find people getting the data sets from Kaggle. So I've already downloaded. Most of the times when you're downloading a data set, it's going to come as a CSV file. So when you click on download, you can click on download as data set. And in case you do not want to forget where you got it, you can bookmark it. You can bookmark it, and it's going to appear on the left side of the panel. So I've already bookmarked it for future reference. So once you've downloaded it, like I said, it's going to come as a CSV file. So how do we upload this data set on MySQL? You're going to come up here that says, you're going to move up here that says create a new schema. So this button looks like two round containers stacked on each other. So when you click on it, you're going to label that schema. So I'm going to give it a name, just something very simple. Product dataset. I'm going to click on apply. So click on apply as well and finish. So on the left side where we have schemas, I have a bunch of schemas here, we find the product dataset. So I'm going to click this button that looks like a play button, and then I'm going to click on tables, and then right click and click on table data import wizard. So this is where we're going to import the data we're going to use. So let's just browse my files, and here it is, message group product. So this is the CSV file that we've gotten from Kaggle. We're going to open and then click on next. Most of the times this option is usually not picked, so just pick it so that you're able to see the tables. So drop table if it exists. Most of the time these tables don't exist, so but I haven't encountered it. But just to be on the safe side, make sure you select that option. Click on next again, and click on next for the data to be imported. So it's gonna take a while, depending on how big that file is. It could take longer. So let's just give it a minute for it to import. So it's preparing the import, it's importing the data file. I think this is quite a large file. I haven't looked at it yet, but I know it has about 4,000 rows or records. So let's just give it a little bit of time for it to work through. So okay, yeah, so it's finished performing the task. We can click on next. So like I said, this terminology of records, it just means rows. So there's about 4,548 records imported. So let's click on finish. So here we can see the table has not yet uploaded itself properly, because ideally if you click on tables, the data set is supposed to come here. So what we're going to do is refresh. Let's just refresh it. And yes, we wanted this button to appear. So here we are. Yeah. So this is the data set we'll be working with. Okay, so let's explore what this table looks like. So when you once you open your table, this is the first query that you'll ever see. And when you run it, it will basically retrieve all the columns that are present in this particular table. And like I mentioned, there are 11 columns. So how do we get to the columns section of when you're on the schema side? So when you click on tables and you click on the table that you have here, you can click on this arrow and it will bring you the columns. So here are all the columns, all the 11 columns that are in this particular table. So let's start by defining some of these fundamental clauses that we have. So let's start with select. And whenever you are writing a query that you do not want to run, or you want to comment out a specific query, you can either use hashtag, you can either use the hashtag, or you can use 2 dashes, but for uniformity purposes, let me just use hashtag, which is what I'm used to. So what does select do? Select specifies columns that you want to retrieve, from this particular table. And if you are trying to retrieve more than one column, you're going to always use commas in between them, just to separate them. And I'm going to show you how that goes. So let's say, let's say you want to know what is under column product ID and product name. I'm going to start with select. So most of these functions I prefer to write them in capital capital letters just to be a little bit more uniform. And I'm going to pick product. Let's start with brand name, and always make sure you type exactly how the column name is written. If you type the wrong word, or you type a different, or you type it in small letters, if it starts with capital letters, it's not going to bring you what you want. So let's pick currency, and let's pick another sell price, another column. So we're taking it from, let me just copy it from here. So from, always end your query with the table you're calling this function from. Most of the times you can end the query with the table you're trying to retrieve. So if I run this, it's going to bring me all the data that is under brand name, currency, and sell price, because I've specified which columns I want to retrieve my data from. Okay, so let's talk about another function. Let's talk about what this asterisk means. In SQL, we call this asterisk a WILDCARD, and a WILDCARD is used to select all columns. It selects all columns. So like we saw in the beginning, when I ran the first query that has the asterisk or the WILDCARD, it brought every single column. All 11 columns are under the output. So that's basically what a WILDCARD is. But if you want to find out how many rows you have in this particular table, you can introduce this function. You can introduce the count function. So in case you missed it in the beginning and you didn't see how many rows we have, you can come here and check again. So I'm going to wrap the asterisk in the count function. So if I run it, it's going to say 4,548 rows. So just to let me rename the column name so that it does so that when we want to come back and find how many number of rows we had, I will know where it is. So let's say let me label the column number of rows. So if I want to give this the new column, so we know the number of rows are 4,548. That's what the count function does. So another function, what we have here that we can see is from. From basically specifies the table. Most of the times when you're working with two different tables, or when you're joining two tables together, you want to be specific on what table you want to retrieve your data from. So for example, maybe we have merged two tables together, and maybe the second table has a different name, and I want to run this particular query. I have to be specific which table I am calling to run. So that's basically the purpose of from. It specifies the table that you want to call this function or to run this query from. Okay, so another thing that I want to mention here, I'm not going to get into logical operators and comparison operators. That will be for the next video, but there's something called a limit function. So what a limit function does, it restricts the number of output rows. So if I run this query one more time, it's going to list all 4,548 rows. But because I might not need all that information, I can specify how many rows I want to look into, especially if you're looking at just a limited number of rows. You do not want to call every single one of those rows. So I'm going to add the limit function. Let's do 5 so that it's easy to see what I mean when I run it, it's just going to give me the first 5 rows. So it gives me a little bit of, it doesn't, what's the word I want to use, it doesn't overwhelm me, especially if you have there's some data sets you'll have like 1,000 or 10,000 rows, but you don't necessarily want to look at all of them. You just want a limited number of them, so you can look. So that is what the limit function basically does. And for the sake of this video, I'm just going to stop here. Later on, we'll look into comparison operators, we look into logical operators, so things like between, where, and then I'll also talk about what order by and group by, what both of those things mean. So just for the sake of this video, I'm going to limit it for here, and yeah, see you on the next one.